I hold in my hand some liquid gold for low carbers. It's healthy, filled with nutrients, and fairly easy to make. Bone broth. I'm making that in my low carb kitchen. So what goes into my chicken bone broth? Well, for me, the best way to make it is to have a final product that is jelly-like. That means I got all the nutrients out of the bones. I have a lot of collagen that leaked out from the chicken parts that I'm using. So for me, the best chicken to use is chicken wings, and I make sure I've got the wing tips and tendons. That's what you really want. And the other key piece is chicken feet. That's right, chicken feet. It looks a little gross, and they are a little freaky looking when you look at them, but they have, again, a lot of tendons, cartilage, not a whole lot of meat. The meat isn't really I'm getting the flavor from or the nutrients from, so that's really important. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my vegetables, and I'm going to be using celery, carrots, garlic, and onion, and then I have a few aromatics, which is just thyme and parsley. Thyme and rosemary. But this isn't going to go on until tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow. I'm making it today. I'm starting today. It's a 24-hour process to make bone broth because that's the only way to make sure you get everything out of that chicken that you're using. So with that, let's go ahead and start preparing the chicken. All right, I have to prepare my chicken feet, but if you're wondering where to get these, because you usually don't see them in your regular grocery store, you can go to your local farmer's market. They usually will have them, or you can go out if you have local farms. You can go and visit that, chicken farms especially. The other place you can get them, which is where I got mine, is from my local ethnic grocery store. We happen to live in an area where we have seven of them right by our house. So, and all of them have a form of chicken feet in there, which is awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the feet. Before I wash them though, I like to prep them ahead of time. And what you really want to have is a good pair of kitchen shears. And you want them, you want the curved ones, because that's where you can actually cut bone. And these are specifically for chicken. So what I'm going to do is, now people do leave on the fingernails, or the toenails, I guess they are, the claws. I don't. And the reason why is chickens scratch and they walk around in an area which isn't necessarily the most sanitized area. So I clip that off. Now, my local grocery store did in fact clean off the yellow skin that's on top of the chicken. You don't want that when you cook it because it gives it a little bit of a funky taste, which is great. But they leave on the nails, so I'm going to clip that off. You know, they wash them, but I still just don't trust it just for sanitary purposes. So you just use your shears, and you go to about the first knuckle, and you cut it off, and it goes flying. They do go flying, but you just cut it off. It really is that easy. Don't freak out about it. So you just clip them, and you want to make sure you get all of them. And this little one over here. Sometimes I have a little one down here too, but you know, there you go. Well, that's how easy it is. You also want to check the bottoms of the chicken too, because sometimes they have calluses. And you know, they're walking on their feet all day. So you just want to clip those off. It's rough. Sometimes it's a little dark in color. You just want to clip it off. And I think, I'm going to put it over here in my colander, and I think I've got a good one to show you. Yeah, there you go. There's a callus. So all I'm going to do is just take my kitchen shears and just trim off the callus. Whoops, I want to make sure I get it. There you go. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, but you just clean it off. And then, like I said, it's just a callus because they're walking around. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish up cleaning off my chicken feet, wash them in my sink along with the wings, and then we'll start making broth. All right, my chicken feet are cleaned, the nails are trimmed, and the wings are washed along with the feet. They're about to go into my crock pot. Now, if you don't have a crock pot, you can cook this on the stovetop in a large pot. However, you are going to have your stove on for 24 hours. So it's a matter of comfort level for you. You are just going to be simmering it. You should be perfectly fine with something happening overnight. But again, it's your comfort level. For me, I'm using my crock pot because I don't have a pot that big. So this is just 6 quarts. So this recipe, I'm only using about 2.5 pounds of actual chicken in this. Now, I've already have some water sitting in here. I have about 8 cups in my crock pot right now. But what I'm going to do, actually, let me shake this up. I'm adding unfiltered apple cider vinegar. And what the vinegar is, this is really important, is I'm going to let my chicken sit in the water with vinegar for about 30 minutes or so. And the reason why is the vinegar, being as acidic as it is, will help basically the chicken by giving up a lot of the collagen, by sort of loosening it up almost. The acidic nature of the apple cider vinegar will do that. And so you're going to get much more out of your chicken than if you just had it in water and put it over a flame or in a crock pot. So with that, I got my apple cider vinegar in here. I'm going to go ahead and touch my chicken, because I love touching chicken, especially when it's raw. I'm going to put this in here and I'm going to cover it up, and it's going to sit for 30 minutes. Now, before I cover it up, as you can see, the chicken is sort of right on top. I'm going to add about 2 inches of water to my crock pot, so the chicken's going to be completely submerged. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then after 30 minutes, we'll start cooking this baby. It's been on, my broth's been on for about 6 hours right now. I'm lifting up and just checking it. And right about, you know, it's very hot. What I'm going to do is do a little bit of skimming. What you'll have sometimes, and I don't have much of it here, but sometimes you'll get this little stuff foaming on top, and that's just a little bit of the scum. Yes, you do get that. And so I'm just skimming a little, what I can off right now. So I'm just doing that. There isn't much here. Pretty clean. I don't want all that broth going, but I'll skim some of it off. And then probably what I'll do is after I skim off this batch, I'll go ahead and stir it up a little bit, and then I probably won't check it again until morning. Good morning. It is the next day. I've got about 3.5 more hours to go on the broth, but right now what I'm going to do is add my vegetables to it. Now, you don't have to add anything to it. You can just cook it like this, and that can be your broth. I just do this for flavoring. So what I'm going to be adding is some celery. I've got carrots, and we'll talk about that in a second. I have an onion, garlic, and I have some aromatics. So I'm using thyme and rosemary, fresh thyme and rosemary. So basically, I normally wouldn't add this much celery. I usually would just add 2 stalks, or 2 to 3 stalks, and that's it. But my stalk of celery was so skimpy that I'm just going to add it all, including the leaves. There's no reason to cut the leaves off. You just need to trim it for anything that looks sort of unsavory, but these are going to go in. For my carrots, now I normally would only add 1 carrot, 1 large carrot, and just chop it up. However, at the grocery stores nearby, I can't buy just 1 carrot. I have to buy a big bag, and that's going to be too wasteful. So my grocery store sells this size of a carrot, already trimmed and cleaned. I still wash them anyway, but 5 of them equals 1 carrot, and there was about 6 of them in a bag, so that was fine. So I'm using that. Now, the onion, I don't peel the onion. I just go ahead and leave the skins on. You don't have to peel it. And all I'm going to do is, it's a pretty good size onion, so I'm going to go ahead, cut it in half. This side's a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to quarter this. But it's just going to go in as is with the skin on. You just want to make sure you clean the onion before you do that. And I'll show you that with the garlic. If you can see this, there's some ends here on the garlic. I'm just going to rip those off and put them in my little trash pail. All right, so all I'm going to do with the garlic is cut it in half. Any of the excess paper, I'll just not necessarily, I don't have to put that in there. I won't. But you don't have to necessarily worry about the paper slices at all. And that's simply because it's going to get scooped out anyway. And you'll see that when I actually start filtering the broth. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and add everything in to my slow cooker. And in a few hours, I'll be actually starting to pull the ingredients out so that I'll just have delicious broth left over. Hey, okay, my broth has been cooking for just about 24 hours. I'm taking off a little bit early, but that's okay. I'm letting it cool down. You can still see, if you can, some steam coming out of it. But what I'm going to start doing is taking out all of the bones, the vegetables, just all that is coming out. And what I'm using, the tool I'm using, if you don't have one, oh, there's a chicken foot. If you don't have one, and I'm just dumping it in a little bowl, is a spider ladle. So you got the big holes, and so all you're doing is you're catching everything. So this is actually a really good tool to have in your kitchen if you do a whole lot of ladling. So I'm taking everything out right now. Okay, I've gotten most of, well, certainly all of the large pieces out, as you can see right here in this bowl, but there's still some things floating in there that my spider ladle isn't going to catch. When it's cooled down enough, I'm going to go ahead and put it in a bowl, but I'm going to be straining it to make sure I get all of the bits out. All right, I'm at the point now where I'm actually going to strain my broth to make sure any final little bits don't get into my tasty goodness. What I'm using is, I have a bowl. I'm going to use a strainer, a mesh strainer that I have. However, I'm also going to be using cheesecloth as another extra layer of protection, so to speak, to make sure that, and I'm sort of just doing it long ways. I'm doing this a little differently because I'm doing a video, but I normally would do something like this over the sink, but I want to show you what it looks like. I'm actually going to use the ladle initially to get this down a little bit before I lift it up and pour it. Otherwise, it's going to go over the place. I've learned from experience. But this is just going to add an extra layer of straining for the broth. So all I'm going to do is just go ahead and take this and start straining it through here. And it's just going right through. The liquid is, not the little bits, that I have here that you can see, like little pieces of thyme and rosemary, and also some small bits of bone, if you can see that. Like there's one little piece of bone right there I don't want. Because who wants to drink bone? I don't. Broth, yes. Bone, no. So it's that simple. Oh, I even see a foot still in there. Oops. Now, I'm going to finish this up, but I'm going to finish it up. I'm going to cover with plastic wrap, and I'm going to put it in the fridge. What's really important, though, is this bowl has to feel like it's at room temperature. If I can start feeling heat from the broth, I let it sit out a little bit longer. I want it at room temperature. The reason why is anything warm or hot that goes into the fridge, it brings down the temperature of the fridge, which affects all your other foods in there, and that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then I'm going to wrap it in plastic wrap, and then I'm going to let it sit in the fridge, chill out, and once it starts chilling, what'll start happening, it'll start becoming jelly. We'll be back in a second. All right, it is quite a few hours after I put my bone broth in the fridge. I had a lot of errands to run, so I just let it go and let it get all nice and chilly and jelly. And sure enough, when you look at it, now, normally, before I show you the jelly, although you can see a little bit of it there, normally you would have a fat cap on top, a white fat cap. You just actually scrape that off, put it to the side, and you can put it in the fridge and use that in your cooking during the week. It's perfectly healthy. It has a high smoke point, so it can go in the oven, which is great, but it's just healthy chicken fat that you can use. Now, what I have here is I don't have as much fat simply because I used the cheesecloth, but as you can see, I achieved gelatin with my bone broth, which is what I want. The nice thing about it is all I have to do is use what I want to use in a pan. Let's say I'm going to cook vegetables in a broth. I just go ahead, put it in a saute or a saucepan, heat it up on low, stir it as I go, and it'll liquefy thanks to the heat. You can also add a little bit of water if you like, or even a little bit of liquid bone broth if you prefer, but it's up to you. Now, I didn't add salt, so when you use it, I do recommend adding a bit of salt, but I like to do it as I go rather than to the whole thing. Now, as far as storage, let me just tell you how I store it. For something like this, I store the bulk of it in the freezer because it'll keep longer. Now, I have a mason jar, but I do not use mason jars in the freezer because they're glass. This I use for my refrigerator, so this is the more immediate need. Now, to store it in the freezer, I just use really simple store-bought freezer containers that you can use. These are disposable ones. This is a great way to store it, and you don't have to worry about broken glass. Now, my ultimate favorite way of doing this, I just found these on Amazon, and I absolutely love these. These are large ice cube trays, and as you can see, there's only 6 of them, but I find that this is a pretty good individual serving size, or 2 of them certainly are. Now, the nice thing about this is a little tray, so you can easily put your mold in the tray, and there's also a lid that snaps right on top. So you don't have to worry about covering it with plastic or tin foil or anything. And then, because these are silicone, you just fold this out, pop it out, and they pop out. So hey, you have to do a little bit of work, but they do pop out fairly easily. I'll give you an example of how I use this. I had some leftover broth from my last batch, and see, just a cube, simple cube. It's a little bit, you know, I didn't put it in quite as smooth on top, but it's a nice cube. And this is actually going to go in my fridge because I'm going to be using a lot of broth this week. So with that, if you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and I'll see you next time.